Yes, let's do this.
Let's do this. Welcome to the AI Business Podcast. I'm Tian, the creative producer of Informa Tech. Join me is my colleague from another company, the master of self-quarantine, the global editor of AI Business, Max Smolax.
Hello there.
On the very first episode of AIB Pods, Max and I will discuss how AI is helping us human with the COVID-19 pandemic because we have to win this for everyone. And Max is going to explain to me how an Israeli company is changing the way AI works and how experts are using the program to learn military tactics from, guess what? Video games. And of course, AI is now generating memes. So here we are. But first of all, Max, how are you doing? How's self-quarantining in London going on?
It's been a bit tough. I mean, working from home is not new to me. You know, like if you work in journalism, you're kind of like, you're familiar with the concept. But not seeing other people is definitely, it's getting to me. And we're sort of like, yeah, we have occasional drinks over Zoom, but it's not the same, is it?
No, not at all. Do you miss travel now?
Yeah, seriously, I miss a lot of things that I thought I'm totally gonna do without. I'm planning to start cycling.
After a month and a half of staying at home, you want to start cycling?
Yes, dude, I'm becoming larger. It's not good. All right, but while we're here, you know, like sort of like trying to find out more about AI. AI has been used to solve the global COVID-19 crisis, and there's essentially two directions AI is being applied in. And one of them is research. Artificial intelligence models actually, you know, like checking through various sort of like chemical components and seeing how they might fit, you know, like combining different properties. Lots of people involved in this. This is, we're not going to tell you anything new, besides the fact that actually the New York Times has just published a story from Venerable Kate Metz, one of the best AI journalists in the business. It's about a London-based company called Benevolent AI, and apparently they have used artificial intelligence to discover a component called baricitinib, originally designed to treat rheumatoid arthritis, and now it turns out that this thing might be very, very useful to treat COVID, and I think they're basically running out past FDA right now.
This is using AI to scour information, like kind of a quick search through data.
Yeah. Mostly, I think it's a combinatorial issue. You know, like it can automatically try to combine different molecules by knowing their properties. And for example, IBM has open sourced a bunch of computer-generated chemical molecules, and sort of like I think there's several thousands of them, and anybody can actually log in and play around with them and try to find a cure. Obviously this is a professional game, but there's a lot of open data out there as well.
Right. And is there, like, in terms of the process, like now this has been going on for a while now, is there any concern or like how this process is doing or not doing?
I think there's progress being made. That's the thing, because it's just like AI is an overhyped subject. Things like COVID, this is where, you know, like you separate the wheat from the chaff, you know, like it's just like, can AI actually help us deal with this very, very realistic problem? And it can. There's another application of AI in sort of like medicine that is actually already being applied and is already helping with patient triage. And that's kind of like automatic image recognition used on medical images. So whether that's CT scans or whether that's X-rays, there are several companies working. They're giving away free tools. There are several choices. If you're, for example, a medical professional, you wanted to try it out. And the idea is not to replace a radiologist, but to essentially speed up the process if somebody comes in suspected for COVID and they've already started developing pneumonia. Because as we all know by now, COVID is not what actually kills you, it's pneumonia that gets you. So as soon as the algorithm spots any signs of pneumonia, those patients are treated as a matter of priority. It's best to get them to the ICU. If it wasn't for COVID, you know, like these things could have been languishing like for another couple more years, because the same technology, for example, is now being applied to look for signs of incidental pulmonary embolism. Pulmonary embolism is a bastard. I mean, yeah, it hits you, and unless you sort of like, especially cancer patients, you know, like people with lowered immunities, people who are already kind of like suffering from health problems, it hits you, and unless you get like urgent treatment, you will die. And the idea is this algorithm sits in the background, always looking for signs of pulmonary embolism. You know, like, so for example, you're preparing for a cancer op, and you get a CT scan with high contrast done, right? But it can sit there for several days before somebody takes a look at it. And by that time, it might be a little bit too late. So the idea is this
Right.
thing is a second pair of eyes. It checks it immediately, and as soon as it sees something out of normal, you get an alarm. Like, guys, you should really check this out as an urgent task.
It's basically a doctor's full aware, always learning, and detail oriented pair of eyes.
Very interestingly, nobody I've ever spoken about this has ever said like a second opinion, because that's a medical term and they want to stay away from that. It's not a second opinion because you need an actual doctor for that.
Correct. And while we're talking about using machine learning, let's talk about DeepCube. This is a company where they kind of market themselves as the future of deep learning. They figure out a way to simplify not only in space but also in time of the machine learning process, in that they can quickly process a lot more information than what's offered in the legacy software. You described to me as the video encoding, and totally makes sense. As a video producer, I watch many iterations of video and how MP4, and now there's H.264, H.265, and now Apple is always launching, finding new ways to make just the file size just a little smaller. And just by doing that a little smaller, it saves everybody a lot of storage and a lot of space. Looks like DeepCube is all about not just doing the facelift of the current process, but changing it entirely, kind of pull the rug out and kind of revolutionize how things are being done.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, it sounds very exciting because everybody wants to optimize deep neural network, and what these guys do is software based inference acceleration. Um,
Mm.
so the hardware guys are like tackling sort of like optimization and efficiency from the silicon design standpoint, and these guys are looking at the software, and it is not tensor based. It's something completely different. It's different from traditional sort of like algorithm pruning methods. So the idea is when you create a machine learning model, it's very, very, very complex. To get it on end user devices, you kind of need to carve out chunks and optimize it and trim it and prune it. There's lots of technical words there, but the idea is to make it as small as possible, because obviously sort of like the storage on your end user device is limited, and it's probably like some kind of, if it's a sensor sitting at the edge, nobody wants to spend money. And if we are going to have gazillion AI enabled IoT devices, this is the only way. We need to optimize software, we need to optimize hardware. Anyway, had a chat with co-founders, sort of like Eli and Yaron, and they claim that they can reduce the size of a deep learning model by a factor of 10. So they shrink it by 90%. If they do this shrinking, they say you might lose a couple of percent of accuracy. But you can also sort of like achieve the same levels of accuracy with a much lower footprint. And it's also more efficient in terms of resources. At the moment, their system, basically, training will take actually a little bit more time. It's going to take about 10% more time. And obviously, sort of like it makes training a little bit less efficient, but it will considerably shrink your end result. They are working on training speed up. Now, the dream is, like, in a couple of years, they can make it both smaller and they can shrink down the training size, so make the process quicker, which is, well, a fantastic thing all around, really.
Real world solution. What would it look like?
It's going to be a benefit for sort of like edge devices. So essentially, like,
Mm.
your smartwatches, your sort of like heart sensors, your little Wi-Fi enabled light bulbs, like whatever that has any intelligence will become cheaper. That's the end game here. That's essentially, more efficient, less storage required means cheaper. You're right. What video encoding did to the internet, I mean, it completely
Yeah.
changed the game.
You can talk about video without talking about that nitty gritty, the process of it all. And by improving that process, like what you were saying, the implication is kind of endless.
Yeah, video encoding scares me. I'm glad there's somebody else to take care of it.
Military AI system is being trained on open world video game. And I'm not a gamer, but you are. So talk to me. What are we looking at?
Enter the Gamebreaker. It's a DARPA project, and yes, it's open, sort of like open for submission. So if you wanna apply, try your hand at it. You can do that now. And the idea is, most games that we play are actually War games. Go is essentially a war game. It's an approximation of a military campaign. StarCraft and Alpha Star, the system that won at StarCraft 2 exactly, created by DeepMind. StarCraft is a war game. I mean, okay, we might be fighting about against aliens, but the idea is the same. DARPA is interested in video games. It's interested in systems, and basically the pitch here is you start creating artificial intelligence models that can imbalance the game. That first of all, like take into account all the rules, and then try to make tiny little adjustments for a large effect.
A lot of games we play are already war games. Chess is pretty much a war game, and obviously we thought about Deep Blue in the 1996 defeat of a famous chess player. And I just think about like that's always been a part of what AI is really good at: learning rules and finding the most efficient way of applying them to real world scenario.
Yes, in previous cases, in cases like like Deep Blue or AlphaGo or StarCraft, the system essentially learns the rules and then it tries to sort of produce an optimum impact while following those rules. It's just like trying to break the rules or trying to tweak the rules and seeing like which tweaks can get you where you want to be is a completely new thing. But it gets better. Basically, if you're participating in Gamebreaker, you can't do it for a single game. You need to do it for at least two, and it needs to be the same system around across both games. So, for example, you start with something like a real-time strategy game like StarCraft, and then you transport it to something like I don't know, maybe an RPG or a third-person adventure game, and it still needs to work.
Tell me this is not a Jarvis versus Ultron scenario. Tell me this thing is actually learning the three rules of robotics by Isaac Asimov. It's war, it's battle.
Just the bloody thing. There is nothing in the Geneva Convention about these tools. We don't have the rules for military AI systems anymore. Everybody wants them. Everybody's thinking about that. Sort of like in America, over here in the UK. But it's all at the draft stage, and while people are drafting rules, the military continues doing what it does, and the same applies to military suppliers, people like BAE Systems or Lockheed Martin in the US. Like those guys, some of the things they do. Do they make me worried? Yes.
From a very selfish standpoint, I would hope this will not only apply to war, but also just apply back to really good machine learning AI video game brand. Where like I don't there's one game I play,
Yeah.
which is NBA 2K16. It's not even the latest NBA. The thing about that game is once I figure out how to beat the computer, I'm bored. I have to find like other players to join me. Obviously, this is a very small and selfish application, but I would hope that this will be something that in the future that we'll look into where like computers figure out how you're doing and they're learning to beat you.
No, absolutely. In gaming, it's been kind of like the North Star goal for years. Like people have done this, but with varying levels of success. But the idea that the game difficulty adapts to the player is massive, and it's just like people do it in different ways, but it's definitely something everybody wants to move forwards to because everybody wants to make an engaging game it's simultaneously challenging but not too challenging.
All right, that's enough about future of warfare. Let's talk about the most important item on the docket, and that is, of course, AI generated coronavirus meme. We're in a place where we're no longer looking at deep fake videos. We're not worried about that anymore. We're looking at machine telling jokes, essentially.
Yes, memes generated using AI, and the evolution of these things has been stunning. Like it's just like early days, like computer generated text and images were really really lame, and right now, like you can find a selection of really really fun things that just emerged from the machine brain. But what's interesting about memes, obviously, is they have a format, right? The format is familiar. We know the component parts, and when you break it down, on one hand, it's kind of like it's exactly the kind of problem that AI can solve. But it gets more interesting. Memes are a combination of characters and pictures, and in terms of decoding that using a computer, that's actually very 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 difficult. And right now, a lot of people are struggling with this problem. It involves like advanced optical character recognition, but it needs a model that can establish the connection between the words and the picture, and this connection needs to make sense. Like, and if it's humorous, it's even harder to do.
Humor is such a personal and cultural thing, and and meme is deeply embedded in that culture of like humor and understanding of what makes people laugh, right? Every culture has their own humor. I was always told British humor is weird. I was always told American humor is offensive, and and they're both right. But then once you figure it out, once you understand it, it's actually funny. And Asian has its own, Taiwanese have their own humor. This AI they're actually learning a cultural course. They're taking a cultural course versus just studying. They're taking so much information, but what they're learning is like telling a good joke takes so much mechanic, a good timing, and if a machine can make me laugh, gosh.
Yeah, absolutely. And humor is very kind of dense in terms of ideas, like, so the best jokes are the ones you actually have to decode. You have to know, like, sort of like, you might need to know history or culture. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So in a way, decoding humor is probably is one of the sort of like toughest tasks, but ones which we need to do, because there's lots of applications in marketing, for example. This is what I'm thinking about. So AI generated advertising is definitely real, and it's there's going to be a lot more of it. And like, it started with Facebook and things like A/B testing, and it's just like, oh well, if we just like do it in a different color, what effect is that going to have on the audience? um, Automating this process is something that's top of mind for a lot of people. And yeah, I've personally talked to several companies which sort of like, this is where they're going. They want to automate marketing, they want to automate creation of these materials, which include graphics, which include text, and which are quite possibly funny. I mean, that works for marketing.
Yeah, it does sound scary where, it's one thing to look at memes and all right, that works for me. That doesn't work for me. But a whole another level where we're in a place where machine is obviously the machine knows so much about us than potentially we know about ourselves or what we know of each other, because it's embedded in every phone. And now what if we're only looking at things that's personalized, the ads that are personalized? The machine is learning what makes us laugh, and what make you laugh might be different than what make me laugh. What might make me click the buy or like see more button is personalized to me. That's a scary thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's just like, what if their marketing is so strong, you have no choice but to buy? Well, that's just the thing. And it's just like, I think for a while in the early days, I thought like GDPR is going to put a dampener on that, because you will be, like, it's going to help limit the collection of data. But it doesn't look like that has happened. Like, okay, they're going to be very careful with your name and date of birth, but things like your like your shopping habits, I think it's still open season. Like, nobody's really protecting that. We haven't got there. All right, let's try something with the surprised Pikachu.
I love that one.
Me, is human good? Is human for a good movie? Everyone, I don't know what to do. Me, confused Pikachu. There's still some work we
Eh,
need to do. Um, but that's no. What is interesting is even the format of this website is a riff on something else. This person doesn't exist is a very, very interesting and sometimes very useful project that generates pictures of non-existent people using deep learning.
that person looks good.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, they do. And so this meme does not exist is kind of like, I think, a continuation of this idea, and just a different riff on the subject.
By the way, I've gone on that page and I've refreshed it 3 times, and 3 times it's given me realistic looking people, but I cannot make of where they're from. They all look like you know, they just look like they're all live in New York for like 20 years, where you can no longer see their race. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
If you
yeah,
live in
yeah,
New
yeah.
York City for 20 years, 10 plus years, your face becomes this multicultural being.
Yeah, no, but that's the future the conservatives are afraid of, right?
Yes.
Well, this has been interesting, and I think very, very useful for me to order my ideas. And it's always a pleasure to talk to you, Tian. But yeah, look out for our podcast. They're gonna come out every 2 weeks, and we're gonna essentially tell you, well, about interesting stuff we found, and hopefully it's gonna be useful for you. I mean, sometimes there's gonna be a little more business, and sometimes there's gonna be a little bit more well, fun and irreverence. And if it's not very informative, we can only apologize.
I'm a marketing robot. Where do I find you?
Every single day on aibusiness.com, and on Twitter at Max Smolax. Yes, if you have any questions, suggestions, ideas, send me a DM on Twitter.
And I am only on Instagram as Tian Chi Fu. I do have a Twitter account, but I use that to kind of just follow trend schedule, which is right now is useless because we're all staying at home.
We'll see you in 2 weeks. Stay healthy, Tian.